Hi guys, my name's Adele Onyango and welcome to another episode of Legally Clueless. No, seriously, I have no clue what I'm doing, but I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. Hello, how are you doing? Welcome to episode 74 of Legally Clueless. I am so thankful that you listen to this podcast, that you're part of the tribe. Remember, you can join us on Instagram. That's at Legally Clueless Podcast. In fact, if you've ever wanted to be on the podcast, yani share a story on the podcast, there's a video on our Instagram page about how you can do that. I'm trying out my video editing skills. So make sure you go and check it out. However, I do hope that you're taking good care of yourself during this pandemic. I totally relate with the many articles talking about how people are getting used to it. And that causes two things. Some people get a bit reckless because you just revert to before corona behaviors. But for me, I think I've just made peace with my masks, with my sanitizer, with limiting interactions with people. And as of now, because I know things are not constant, especially when it comes to my emotions, as of now, I'm adapting to that. But I'm also trying to limit the amount of draining information that I interact with. So, around deaths and things like that, I just want to hang on to this one place that I'm at. I know it's a bit selfish, but I want to hang on to this one place for as long as I can. Because as I said, it's never constant. So in this episode, one of the Legally Clueless tribe is going to be sharing such a necessary, heart-wrenching story. Listen to this.
I thought, why not go to Nairobi? And coming from a small village, it was something. Going to university, it was a big deal. I'm the firstborn in my family and I am an orphan. I landed in Nairobi. I went to stay with my aunt. She has this huge house. She used to have a house help. When I arrived, I offered, as a way of thanking her. And I thought, as a good village person, I would go and, try and help around the house. In 2018, that's when I started having these migraines. And all this time, her children didn't do anything. They would wake up, surf the internet from morning to evening. So in May of 2018, I collapsed in class during a presentation. I was told that I had just suffered a minor cardiac arrest.
When I received the story demo for this particular story, I was just like, wanted to rush over and give him several hugs, but also it's such an important conversation that we normally don't know how to navigate around because the abuse or the torture or the negativity comes from a stranger. It's almost easier to kind of confront it or speak about it. But when it comes from your family, it's normally very tricky to navigate. And we're going to get to that a little later in this episode. However, this week has just been, let me tell you, my anxiety came back full force. I think I had a total of 3 anxiety attacks in the span of 2 days. Yeah, hectic. So last week on Saturday, as I was having my laptop issues, which I talked about in the last episode, I received a call from somebody who I really trust and respect because we have similar values. And she tells me there's a youth program being launched and I'd love you to host it and moderate a panel. And the president of Kenya is also going to be having a Q&A with young Kenyans and I'd love you to moderate that as well. I've done an event like this before a year ago. In fact, I'd done it with her, which is why she had actually reached out to me. So in the chaos of the laptoping, I say yes without even giving it too much thought. And then Sunday, I'm feeling a bit anxious about it because when it comes to government things, I'm very vocal about the things government is doing that I think they shouldn't be doing and the things they're not doing that I think they should be doing. And so I was wondering, in this event, will I have agency over my truth? Will I be able to ask the questions that I want to ask? Am I going to look like a sellout? So this is like bubbling on Sunday. Hiya. In comes Monday. So, Monday was Val's birthday, my best friend who has made cameos. Can you call it a cameo if it's audio? on this podcast before. It was her birthday. So I went to surprise her with cake. And on the way there, the organizers for the event call me. I'm still like, okay, cool. I'll do it. I think I'll do it. Then my co-host calls me, and he has co-host for the event. He has a few reservations. And then I just take on all of that anxiety that he's having. So by the time I get to Val's, we have the cake, fun times, and then I tell her about it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to call them and just say I changed my mind and I can't do this. And on the drive back home, I was like, man, maybe I can even just call them and tell them I'm not feeling well. I might say something has happened in my family. I have a personal emergency. Like, I'm having all of these thoughts. So I get home and I call the lady that I mentioned, who I completely respect. And I'm just so happy that she's part of my tribe of women in my career, whether she likes it or not. I call her and I'm just like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. I'm not sure I want to do this, blah, blah. So she's like, okay, let's walk through this. What are your reservations? I tell her. She's like, what issues would you want to highlight? I tell her. She's like, great. That's going to be possible because we're not trying to censor you. I'm going to make sure that the program is in such a way that it benefits you and the things that you stand for. So I'm like, all right, it's cool. Later that evening, I have my first panic attack. My partner, Fal, bless him, has to kind of like calm me down. And I reached out to actually just one friend. I like saying a couple, like I have so many friends. It is not the case, man. Anyways, I reached out to a friend and he sends me a long message just like, trying to rationalize everything. Tuesday comes. Hey, now we're doing, and this is a virtual event. So we do a dry run on Zoom, have calls with all the panelists, and I'm just like freaking out. Because one of the issues I wanted to address was like teen pregnancies. I really don't like the direction, especially the Ministry of Education has taken. There's a rep from that ministry in one of the panels I'm moderating. So I start having the second anxiety attack and I can't breathe. I feel like my chest is so heavy. And then the funny thing that happens is my eyesight becomes blurry. And it's always so funny because I've told this to my therapist once and she was like, just forgive me for laughing. But genuinely, with my eyesight, it feels like my eyeballs are shaking. Not my head, my eyeball. I can't explain it. It's intense. I'm going through this. Luckily, I have another woman and I'm going to shout her out, Njoki Ngumi. I called at like 10 p.m. on Tuesday. This is the day before the event. I call her and I'm just like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. I don't know. Like I'm in the middle of an anxiety attack. I can't breathe, blah, blah, blah. And, she calms me down, walks me through why it's important for me to have that space and that microphone and to speak certain truths. She helps me craft some of my questions, especially the ones that I was like, I'm having a problem with this one. I feel like it doesn't say what I wanted to say. I test some of the questions with her. I'm like, have I missed out something? She just helps me. Why that was so important for me is because I've said this before in this, probably even episode 1 or 2. In traditional radio, people are pitted against each other. And so it becomes a competitive field, even when it really should not be, because you're there because of your personality. Nobody can be Adele better than Adele. Nobody can be John better than John. But the management in most of the media houses pits people against each other. So you think you're in competition. And if you're not conscious enough, you won't question. And so because of that, in traditional radio, I always felt like I did not have people to turn to for advice or for help. I think the only person I could have candid conversations with was Linda Nyangweso, who has also been on the podcast before. And it's because we shared that lack of companionship, you know what I mean? And decided to create our own. So this moment with Njoki was so important to me because I was like, wow, this is what it feels like. I've never had this. It's like when you leave a toxic relationship and then you get into a healthy one and you're just like, hiya? You mean, wow, we can have like genuine conversations. Oh, you mean you can support me? Oh, wow. You mean you communicate? Hey. Anyway, so she walks me through this. Then Wednesday comes. I'm so nervous. My makeup artist, Daisy, who's just amazing, calms me down throughout the process. And generally, the team, so I was contracted by a consultancy firm. they're not linked to government. And so they did their best. Oh, I appreciate them. Whenever they call me, I will do anything they ask me to, because they protected my truth, my agency, my voice, sometimes even when other factors were trying to infiltrate. And so they really made the day go so beautifully. And then the final thing that I got to do was ask the president a question, and it went so well. I thought my voice was shaking. Like when I was speaking, I thought, I'm like, this man even hearing me? Because my voice, hey! But then when I rewatched it, I was like, hiya, wow, like my voice wasn't as shaky as it was in my head. And it went really well, and I'm so thankful. But that was the week. And then, off of that event going well, I was on a high. And later on today, being Sunday, I'm going to hang out with my niece. I'm so excited. She's just like the coolest person ever, which is crazy because she's only a couple of weeks old. But being an auntie is such joy. Oh my God. It's such joy. I even chatted one of my closest aunts, Auntie Jane, and I was like, Kumbe, this is why you love me so much. It's so beautiful. I think also because I didn't go through the pain of the pregnancy or the childbirth. And I also don't have to go through the late nights or the lack of sleep that our parents go through. I just get the good bits. So let's jump into the song of the week, which is a song that is just giving me so much joy. I stumbled on it on my Apple Music. I was just listening to some pre-curated playlists, not curated by me. And then the song started playing and I was like, please, what is that dopeness coming from the speaker? And it is called Icy. It's by Pink Sweats. Just check the description of this episode. You'll find a link to the music video. It just puts me in such a good mood. It's a feel-good song. Since I've just interacted with it, I don't know the lyrics, kabisa. I'm probably singing the wrong things. So I can't tell whether it's deep or not, but it just makes me feel good, and I wanted to do that for you as well. So on 100 African Stories in this episode, as I mentioned earlier, it's about interactions with family and toxic interactions with toxic relatives. So when I was recording this story, at the very beginning, Jesse, who's the storyteller, mentions how he's an orphan. And that really stood with me because after my mom died, maybe like 2 years later is when I was like, oh, wait, I'm an orphan. Because I was just trying to understand this new label because my dad died in 2007. Wasn't super close to him. My parents divorced. I've said this on episodes before. And he died just as I was attempting to fix our relationship. Although now that I'm older, in hindsight, I really don't think our relationship could ever have been fixed. Now that I fully grasp the things he did to us as kids and the things he did to my mom. But obviously at that time, I'm just like, rainbows and butterflies. I will forgive this man. But in hindsight, I'm like, even if you were alive, I'm not too sure we would be able to kick it. And then, of course, I lost my mom in 2013. So when Jesse said he's an orphan, I was like, oh my God, here's this word again that I'm not too sure how to navigate. And then we record the story, hearing what he went through with a toxic relative. This phrase comes to my mind. Every family has that one relative. Sometimes we call it that mad relative or that wild one. And I think it's us running away and trying to normalize something that shouldn't be normal. It is not normal for somebody to be cruel to another person, whether they're related or not. And Jesse's story made me realize that. In what way? I'll tell you after you listen to his story.
100 African Stories.
There is no proper life that you live in university as a musician.
If I constantly just walked around feeling sorry for myself, I'm never going to get anything done.
There was a bit of frustration in between all of that.
I've been breaking my back for this company.
Therapy is not for the weak or for the crazy.
Stories from Africa.
My name is Jesse Ntengei Ireri, and I'm from a county called Tharaka Nithi in Chuka in Kenya. I'm 21 years old and I'm a student at Kenyatta University, currently in my fourth year taking theater arts. Before I went to the university, I wanted a course that would help me nurture my talent, which was performing and writing. And I thought, why not go to Nairobi? And coming from a small village, it was something that Nairobi, it has these huge platforms that help people nurture their talents. Yeah, so going to university, it was kind of a big deal. I'm the firstborn in my family, and I am an orphan. We are two. I and my younger sister. We are both raised by our grandparents, who thankfully are able to pull us through high school. And my younger sister, she's currently in Form 2. But yeah, I managed to get to campus. Going to campus was like, this, I have to do this. If not for me, for my grandparents who have really worked hard for me, and also for my younger sister to show her that anything is possible even though you're from a small village. And I landed in Nairobi in 2016, but sometime in September, and that is when I joined campus. Fresh from high school, happy with big starry eyes and all these hopes and dreams in your small suitcase. It may sound cliche, but this was it. This was my time to kuamoka, or make it. Little did I know that this would be the start of something that would be completely opposite of what I had grown up knowing about family and cohesiveness, taking care of each other, and it challenged me. I landed in Nairobi and I went to stay with my family. My aunt, a distant aunt, who had initially offered to accommodate me at her place, and this was heaven because I didn't have to pay rent. That was a burden taken off my grandparents' shoulders, and I had a place to stay. I had a place to eat, and also keep me in touch, with family. I know I was not a total stranger. I was not with total strangers, And the first few months, it was okay. Around six months, And my aunt was a teacher. She's still a teacher at a primary school in suburban area in Nairobi, and she has this huge house, and she used to have a house help. And when I arrived, I offered, as a way of thanking her and for not paying rent and not having to pay for food. I thought, as a good village person, I would go and try and help around the house, maybe clean the house sometime, make them some meals every now and then. But little did I know I was opening a can of worms. At first, it was effortless, kujitolea and everything, and I was happy doing it. But now, after the school really started kicking in session, with doing theater arts, you have to pull long hours of rehearsal, sometimes overnight rehearsals, and you come home, you're tired, and maybe you tend to oversleep. And then that's when the abuse started, the emotional abuse. She would wake up and start saying to you, okay, sorry, she has 3 children, 2 daughters and a son. The son is a year older than me, and the 2 daughters are younger. She fired her house help, or rather, she let her go since I was doing almost all the work. And she told me now we would be helping each other around the house. So here I am with busy with schoolwork and moving around, coming home late, sometimes even at 11 in Nairobi. She used to live around State House Road, Arboretum Drive. I would come, and there are no matatus from town to Arboretum, so I had to walk from town, even though I got to town from rehearsal from maybe around midnight. And you have to run through the streets or walk really fast to get to the safer parts of the road. sometimes I would Uber if I had enough money saved over. And, you come home and you find her there and she's angry waiting for you at the door. And she starts asking you, where have you been? Why do you pull these long hours? You would have done something else, maybe medicine. They don't pull, they don't keep you in school for that long. She started making me feel insecure about what I was doing, and she made me feel safe at first, but now she started getting really offensive. And naturally, I don't talk much. I think she took this as I don't know. She took this as a motivation to keep on telling me what I should do. If my rehearsal starts maybe after classes, I should maybe, skip a day or two of rehearsal and, come help around the house. And while I'm saying this, the son used to attend campus around CBD, so it was really easy for him to go home and, help around after classes. And I used to go all the way from State House to Ruiru. That's where my campus is. And I would wake up in the morning at 7, or sometimes I wake up at 5 if I have classes at 7, and spend the whole day and maybe sometimes come back home at 1 or 2 in the morning. And this really rattled her up because she thought, here you are, you're not paying anything, you're not paying rent, you're not paying for food, and you can afford to stay out late and come. You just come, eat food, sleep, wake up, go back to school again. On Saturdays, she would just tell me, it's your time to clean the house. And she has this really big house, and it's a story house, and it has a lot of windows, and the floors are wood, polished wood. I would scrub them every single Saturday, regardless if I have rehearsals later in the day or if I have assignments to do. She didn't care. Let me just say, she was really abusive, verbally abusive. She would complain about everything I did, she did not appreciate anything at all. You cook food, she's like, oh, it's too salty. You make tea, she tells you, you put too much milk, I don't like that. Did you use skimmed milk or did you use whole milk? You dust everywhere around the house, and she'd start complaining and saying, oh, there's a spot you've missed, you did not clean my bedroom, you did not take out the sheets, you did not do any. I mean, it was just complaints. I endured this for almost a year. When I talk to my grandparents, they would tell me, you just bear with it, you're about to finish. And now I'd laugh and ask them, I have 3 years to go, I'm not about to finish anything. And they just say, beggars can't be choosers. And I just keep quiet and maybe sometimes go to a Barreta park and, sit somewhere and cry because it was really hard. In 2018, that's when I started having these migraines from lack of sleep. And, sometimes I'd go to school without carrying food or money for lunch. And sometimes I'd forget to eat and, panicking every time, asking, looking at the watch, I'll be late to go home and do chores. And all this time, her children didn't do anything. They would wake up, surf the internet from morning to evening, stream movies and everything. And the way I left the house in the morning, that's how I'd find it in the evening. And they'll not be given flack about it. So it all rested on me, and it was heavy. Let me just say, for lack of a better word, it was really heavy to carry that burden. Even as you're performing to a panel of your lecturers, sometimes you forget what you're doing, and you just keep quiet or forget what you're doing, and have these time lapses and blanks during presentations or performances. And this really took a toll on my GPA in school, and I was called for a disciplinary hearing because of being absent-minded in class during performances or presentations. And when I was asked, I found myself defending my family being my aunt, defending her, telling the panel that I'm not being overworked, it's just that I don't know how to manage my time well. So in May of 2018, I collapsed in class during a presentation. And the lecturer took me to the health unit in campus. We have a small dispensary. And I remember I felt as if I was floating. After that, I woke up 2 hours later in a bed in the main campus hospital, and I was told that I had just suffered a minor cardiac arrest. This was shocking, and the way, let me just, for lack of a better word, African nurses, they come and swarm you with questions, even when you're on the hospital bed. They start asking, kijana mdogo kama wewe unaweza toa wapi stress? Stress ndio inaua watu saizi. Unaweza toa wapi stress na hauna bibi ama familia? And you just keep quiet and look at them. And even one nurse had the audacity to ask me, Queenie, you wanted to kill yourself because of your girlfriend? And I could not say anything. I could not tell them it was my aunt who was overworking me. I couldn't sleep. My head is throbbing. It's painful. I can't even think straight. When I stand up, I couldn't even walk. And this nurse is just, I kept quiet, and eventually they gave up, and I was admitted for an overnight observation, and then I was discharged the following day with some medication, some pain relievers, and I was told to come back after 2 days for checkup. So I went home. When I arrived home, my aunt did not even bother to call me. She didn't ask me where I was. She thought I was having my overnight rehearsal. I came home to find that my uncle and my other cousins had left for a prayer retreat in Heaven's Gate, and now we were the two of us in the house. I came home. I continued about my chores. Mind you, I feel like my head is exploding. I'm hitting all over, and yeah. So my aunt came and told me that she was expecting a guest that evening, and she had a friend. Yeah, the friend was from Namibia, and she was an entrepreneur, and she had this big, huge Nigerian bags full of human hair and hair extensions, wigs, weaves, and she would just bring them from Namibia at a cheaper price and come to sell them to Kenya. In Kenya, I'm sorry. And this was the first time they had met in over 3 years. So you can imagine the feast that was prepared. And after the food, I did the dishes. After communing with her, and I left them to talk, I did the dishes and left. At around 2 a.m. in the morning, my aunt woke me up and she told me that the curtains needed to be washed. And I asked her, couldn't it wait till morning? And then she turned into this raging beast, and she started hitting me, insulting me, telling me that I've been an ungrateful person. I did not care about anyone but myself. I am selfish. I just leave in the morning and come in the evening expecting everything will be laid out for me as if I had employed them. And I was at a loss for words. And at this time my head was splitting. I was in pain, and I could not say anything. I could not do anything. I was at this woman's mercy, and I could not even. Her husband was not there to calm her down, and this friend of hers was in another room, and she was just standing at the hallway listening at what was happening. And I did not know what to do, so I got up. I took out the curtains. I washed them, hand wash. I hand washed them at 3 in the morning. I hung them out to dry, and I didn't even go back to sleep. I went for a walk at 4 a.m. I walked all the way to Dennis Street Road and back to Arboretum Drive. I went to town. I came back again, and just waiting, just thinking about what is really happening. And by the time I came back, my ears were boiling. I was hot all over, and that is when I got to the gate, I collapsed again. Now this time I was taken to hospital at Bliss. It's a chain of dispensaries around Kenyatta Avenue, and I was given some injections for the pain, and then I was referred to my because of my school ID. I was referred back to my school hospital, and that's where I was told that due to the level of stress hormone cortisol in my body, my brain had shrunk. My prefrontal cortex had shrunk, and I could not go anywhere with that level of toxicity in my blood. So I stayed in hospital for 3 days. I called my grandparents, and they managed to get a few of my direct aunties to come and take care of me while in the hospital. I all this time I did not. I told that lady that I had gone to stay with my aunties, so I would be back after a week or so. The CT scan showed that a sizable portion of my brain had shrunk by 3%, and that is when it hit me that if I continued staying at this place, I would eventually die. I had started developing signs of jaundice because of excess bile in my system. I could not even structure out a single sentence on paper. I could not speak coherently, and I could not even eat. I was forced on some sleep medication over a period of 5 days, and I started getting better eventually. And all this time, I was thinking and asking myself, am I broken? Will I be the same again? Is this the price I have to pay to learn? Is this what relatives do? Overwork their other relatives because they're offering a service. Is this the kind of society where I want to bring my children into? And relying on the word of of another relative that will take care of your children, only to find them they're dead or mistreated and abused. And all this time, I came to learn later that I was being gaslighted by this woman. She was all merry and stuff, and sprinkles and chocolate, until it all turned to be something else. And I think I said something to myself during that period I was recovering. I said that if I don't have a place to stay in Nairobi or anywhere I travel, I better not go. If I can't finance it, or if my grandparents or my relative or my close guardian cannot find it, why not? Why go? Why bother yourself to do it again? Because it will all come back again. Now I even have trust issues. I've learned to live with it. Every time I hear that we're going somewhere for a celebration, I stay home, and I find peace with that. I even I fear going out again, even to people, to friends, with friends I have, or to friends' places, because I don't know how long it will take for them to, mistreat me again. I have trauma from that period, and this lady didn't even apologize. She didn't know what went on, because I thought, I don't have to tell them. I don't have to tell them what happened, because they know, even though they were not aware of it. They know. I would not want for anyone to go through what I went through, Adele. That was so close to death, and thinking I have a younger sister at home, and with no other siblings, and with grandparents who have sacrificed everything to get me to where I am. No, that I would not wish that on anyone. I left after recovering for about a week. I was discharged and went immediately to my grandparents' place in the countryside. I told them what had happened now in detail, not from the phone, and they were shocked. They were mum. They didn't even know what to do. They just told me, "I'm sorry. We are sorry for putting you through all that. We didn't know what kind of person we were putting you in, and we didn't know who exactly what exactly we were doing. We thought, her being your aunt, she would take care of you just like she would take care of her children, and she had promised us such." I managed to recuperate fully, and yeah, now I'm well, and thank God for the far he has brought me. it wasn't easy. There are times I'd have, nightmares. Every time I hear someone shouting, I would, replay that fateful morning and, just go rigid and become apprehensive all over again. But thank God it's done. So after I recovered, I went back to school, but now my grandparents stretched themselves again and managed to get me a place nearer to school where I didn't have to commute on a daily basis. And yeah, the rest is not history, but it helped me. It really helped me because I got to be part of a forum called Amazing Minds by a friend of mine. His name is Sam Talam. It's a psychotherapy group. It deals mostly with youth and around the campuses. And sometimes I go and share experiences and also learn from other people who have gone through the same thing, issues of abuse, be it physical or emotional. And, we get to share and listen to these amazing stories. And for me, it has been that alone was enough to help me heal fully. As much as it's painful sometimes to narrate the story again, it's like I get healed a little more when I share the story. And to date, I didn't tell my aunt what happened or why I left. I just told her that my grandparents had decided to let me rent out at a place nearer to school. And if she comes and demands to ask, or even if she listens to this story, I'll be ready for her. I'll be ready to confront her and maybe tell her what she did to me wasn't right.
Catch our next African stories in the next episode.
Man. So first, this story is just a reminder that we need to be careful about stress. And because you can't see stress, you normally downplay the effects it has on your health. But wow, finding a healthy coping mechanism or outlet for your stress is so important. Oh my God. That story just in so many points broke my heart, but I'm just so glad it ended on like a happy note. I have to apologize. So parts of the audio may not be as clear as I would have loved them to be, but it's because of where Jesse was. We were recording it remotely, and so there was not a good internet connection, and so we had to revert to plan B to be able to record it. And then the second thing, in terms of normalizing that toxic relative, as every family has one of those. Please. Being cruel is not normal. Neither should it be tolerated. I remember after my parents divorced, and it was not those amicable divorces. My dad was horrible to my mother. We ended up moving in with some relatives, and man, there's so many relatives who came through for us at that time, even just to make things seem normal for us kids. Because looking back, for like 90% of that time, I thought everything was normal. Like me, my life, my living conditions, everything seemed so normal. I was still in the same school. I was eating meals. I was still getting bugged about homework. I was still going for swimming galas, training. I never missed or lacked anything, even though my mom was really going through it in life. Remember, she had been diagnosed with breast cancer, going through the most at work, going through this divorce. But even then, we had such supportive relatives. It was amazing. But there's always that one. And I remember a relative telling me, I think I was being scolded for something, I don't know, but a relative telling me that I should go back to my father's people. Man, it really broke my heart. That really broke my heart. And being the last one that I am, I snitched to my mom, to my uncle, to my sisters, to everybody in true last born nature. And she, they confronted that relative. And years later, I think maybe 3-4 years ago, I actually also confronted that relative. And I said, when I was this number of years old, you told me ABCD. I have never been able to relate with you the same since. It didn't end amicably. But it felt good to be able to say, hey, you did this to me. Hey, you did this to my sisters. Hey, you did this to my mom. And don't for 1 second think that I've forgotten that. And I did also articulate that the only way healing can happen is if people acknowledge their wrongs, apologize for the wrongs, give the other person a chance to absorb that apology if they want to. Then the conversation about, can we figure out this relationship? Can we rebuild it? Can be had. Needless to say, our relationship is like at 1%. All right, and if the story made you feel a particular way or made you remember something that you've experienced, feel free to let me know on the Legally Clueless hotline number, which is +254 768 628 790. I absolutely love getting messages from you.
Hey Adele, morning. It's Mboche. I am so happy listening to your to this week's episode with you and Val. I really envy your relationship. It seems fun the way you guys encourage each other. You're there for each other, even through your stories. And I can get when you're having your inside jokes, even when you're talking to each other. It was just so fun. And maybe next time you can do like over an hour, because it's really fun listening to you, and it makes me crave for such a relationship. I also want to be a writer, but I'm full of self-doubt and I don't know, fear. I don't trust my work and stuff, so I've never put it out somewhere, but I plan to do so maybe soon. I don't know when. And listening to Val talk about her journey, even back when in the previous episodes, I feel like, yeah, maybe I can start soon.
That was sent in by Mboche, aka Esther Mboche. Thank you so much. At the end of this past week, I did go through all of the story demos, I want to say. There were quite a few. Thank you to everybody who has sent through their story demos. I have scheduled recordings for the whole of August. So now I'm scheduling recordings for September. So if you want to share your story on this podcast, just send a 1-minute story demo. Just tell me a bit about the story you want to share to the podcast number. It's very simple. Head over to Legally Clueless Podcast on Instagram. There's a video on the IGTV tab about that. Also, remember, you can catch this podcast on Trace FM. Head over to traceradio.co.ke for a list of all the frequencies, especially now that we can move around this country. You can tune in the old-fashioned way, or you can stream on that website. And the podcast is also on Ghana, GAANA, which is India's leading music and podcast streaming platform. So if you have family in India, tell them they can now listen to Legally Clueless from the comfort of Ghana. And finally, the podcast is going to be on an African super app very soon. I'm super excited about it. But yeah, that's going to be coming soon. Once it does, I will definitely let you know about that. And that's it for this episode of Legally Clueless. You can share this podcast with your friends. You can keep it for yourself. I'm not judging. Just make sure you're here next week for the next episode.